Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We'll begin shortly. We're just waiting for a few more people to join. Perfect. And it looks like the amount of attendees is starting to slow down. So we'll see if there's any last members that are willing to join a little bit later. But we will begin soon. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Compton. I'm the Transportation Electrification Financial Coordinator for ODOT, and I work predominantly on the Community Charging Rebates program. Thank you for being here today. We're going to present on the Community Charging Rebates program, but before we do that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Brittany.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brittany Breen, and I'm a Senior Program Associate on the Access to Charging team at Fourth. Fourth is providing outreach, education, and technical assistance for the Community Charging Rebates program. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end, so you can put any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll be answering those in the chat during the presentation as well.
Perfect. And with that, we will get started. So as we go through this presentation, I wanted to also mention that we'll be dropping links in the chat. So as we provide any resources, a link will be listed there, and you can find it in the chat dialog. As you can see on the screen, Jillian Demidio is listed. She will not be joining us today, but she may be joining in the chat later on. So the goal of today's webinar is to cover some of the basic eligibility information and to discuss the funding available and how it will be distributed. ODOT has contracted with Fourth, as Brittany mentioned, to provide a high level of technical support both before and during the application process. Please keep in mind this is a soft launch of the program to help you understand the basics of how to prepare for round 2. Details are evolving, and the best way to stay informed is to check the website, sign up for the newsletters, and join our upcoming webinar dates. As we near the launch date on March 5th of 2024 at 9 a.m., these sessions will become more detailed and help walk you through the application process. Before we dive in deeper, if there's anyone that could not stay for the entire session, that's okay. We will be recording and posting this session on the CCR website. So I'm going to stay on the slide for a bit of time. If anybody wants to take a photo, now is your chance. This is the February schedule for future information sessions, as well as the office hours that we have available. You can meet one-on-one with Brittany or myself during the office hours to clarify on any questions. I also wanted to mention that, as you can see in the last information session listed, that we will be going over the application in greater detail and walking you guys through the application process. So the next 2 information sessions are going to cover mostly the same thing, but then that last one is going to open up the application portal and we're going to walk through it together. The program aims to help reduce the cost for the applicants and place EV chargers in strategic locations, whether it's at multifamily housing, publicly accessible parking, or workplaces. Rebates equate to $3,500 to $5,500 per port, or up to 75% of the eligible cost, whichever is less. Applicants can apply in two ways, either as a pre-installation or post-installation project. We will go over the rebates and the application flow in more detail in the following slides. The program will launch on March 5th at 9 a.m. and close once funds are fully reserved or by July 3rd, whichever comes first. Targeting priority communities is a key element of this program. The goal is to give these communities a head start to the next EV wave. The program looks to place stations within multifamily housing complexes, workplaces, and shopping districts, predominantly in places where people plan to charge for longer periods of time. Here are some of the main programmatic changes that will occur for round two. As mentioned before, we will add workplace as an eligible site location. Workplace charging stations must predominantly serve employees who work at or nearby the location. Publicly accessible parking and workplace locations must include a minimum of 2 ports and a maximum of 12 ports. Whereas for multifamily housing, the projects must include a minimum of 4 ports and a maximum of 12 ports. Third-party applicants can apply on behalf of a site owner or authorized agent, however, they are not the rebate recipient. This means Forth can now help applicants apply for rebates. We have reduced the amount of quotes required to only 1 quote. The rebate levels for publicly accessible chargers has been increased. The replacement of broken equipment is eligible, but projects must still follow the minimum port requirements. We will have a new qualified products list of chargers on our website soon. Service level agreements or maintenance contracts will be required for public projects to ensure that these chargers are up and running. On this slide, we've added a pie chart to help you visualize the updated budget. The funds will be separated into 2 buckets. There is a total of $2.5 million for the second round. 30% or $750,000 will be available for non-priority communities, and 70% or $1.75 million for priority communities. These rebates will be reserved on a first-come, first-served basis in each category. Please note that a single entity cannot claim more than $150,000 in rebates per round. Here's an image of the priority type locator map that applicants can use now. If you have a specific location in mind, you can search the address once you open the map, and the map will generate an answer. That answer will state whether the site location is a priority or non-priority community. If you have to search a general area, you can click on the map on the website and zoom into that location. The key will be on the right-hand side to help you distinguish what type of area it's considered. I want to clarify that every location in the state of Oregon is categorized either as a priority or non-priority community. This tool will only differentiate which bucket of money the rebates will pull from. Here is the rebate breakdown in greater detail for eligible projects. Beginning with the first row, Level 2 chargers that are considered publicly accessible parking will receive $4,500 per port, or up to 75% of eligible costs. Chargers rated at 11.5 kilowatts or higher, installed at a public site, are eligible for a higher per port rebate. Workplace Level 2 chargers will receive $3,500 per port, or up to 75% of eligible costs. Level 1 chargers for both workplace and multifamily housing will receive $750 per port. However, there are additional port requirements when installing a Level 1 charger, so keep that in mind. Multifamily housing Level 2 chargers will receive $5,500 per port, or up to 75% of eligible costs. Rebates are calculated on either a maximum dollar amount per port as listed in the chart, or a percentage of eligible project costs, whichever is less. To apply for the program, eligible applicants must be a business, nonprofit organization, state, local, or tribal government entity. Businesses and nonprofits must be licensed to do business in Oregon with a valid Oregon business license. They must also be the site owner or authorized agent with a site verification form. Third-party organizations may assist eligible applicants in the application process or apply for a rebate on their behalf, but the rebate must go to the entity that incurs the project costs. Here are some examples of ideal site locations. For publicly accessible parking sites, some examples include tourist locations, retail stores, and transit stations. For multifamily housing, some examples include apartment buildings, townhouses, and condos. And lastly, some workplace examples include office buildings, manufacturing facilities, universities, schools, hospitals, and more. And keep in mind, these are only a select amount of examples provided, but the list is much longer. Here's a list of eligible costs to begin considering. I won't go over the full list, just to name a few. Charging equipment, installation, labor and material costs, engineering design costs, electric service upgrades, project signage, service level agreements, and network agreement costs. I will leave this slide up for a little bit longer if anyone would like to take a photo or note down some of the eligible costs. Okay. So there are two ways to apply for the rebate. The first is with the pre-installation method, and the second is the post-installation method. We'll begin with the pre-installation application flow. To qualify for an incentive, applicants may apply prior to the project's installation and reserve funding. We will go into greater detail on the application specifics in that final info session. That way, everyone feels comfortable with the application process. To begin, the applicant gathers and submits all of the necessary documentation. If there are any errors with the application, ODOT will send it back to the applicant with a note explaining what they need to fix. The applicant will have 10 days to make any of the necessary corrections and resubmit the application. Once any errors are corrected, ODOT will review the application again and reserve the funding. The applicant then has 270 days to complete installation. Once the post-installation portion of the application is submitted and reviewed, if everything is correct, the application is approved and a payment is disbursed. Now, this is the post-installation application process. To qualify for an incentive, eligible costs cannot be incurred until after the program launch date of June 13, 2023. And an applicant must apply for the rebate within 90 days of the installation date. Charging equipment with an installation date before October 6th of 2023 are not eligible for round 2 of this program. The guidelines define the term installation date as the date on which the charging station is affixed to its permanent location, connected to the electrical source, and ready for use. Again, the application goes through the reviewer process. If there is an error, the applicant will receive a notification to fix the error. Once the applicant resubmits and everything is correct, the project is approved for payment. And that payment, from once it's approved to when it's received as check in hand, usually takes around 45 business days. There are lots of resources on the Community Charging Rebate Program website for applicants to review, including the Priority Type Locator Map, the Climate Office Transportation Electrification webpage, EV Charging 101, and details regarding Round 1. The guidelines for Round 2 have been posted as a draft form. Remember, ODOT reserves the right to make changes to the resources before the program launch date. If you have any questions after the presentation, please contact us at the emails listed on the slide. You can also visit the CCR website or get updates on Forth and ODOT's social media pages. After this session, you'll be sent a survey. You'll be sent directly to a survey, actually. If you have time, we really appreciate your feedback. Now we will begin answering your questions in the chat.
Go ahead and put any questions you have into the chat. I haven't seen any so far. When will the site verification third-party document be available?
It should be available next week.
Okay. Can the grant be combined with rebates from power utilities like PGE? Yes, it can. We just ask that you apply for the PGE rebate first, and you'll want to notify them of dual participation. So, yeah, you can apply for both and stack the rebates.
Mhm.
The list of approved chargers has not been posted yet on the ODOT website, but I believe that will be up soon. Is that right, Jenna?
Yep, that's correct. We're switching over to the EPRI list of chargers, and so we'll have that available as soon as we can.
And then is there an APL list? Is it the same as the prior list?
So I believe by APL you're referring to our qualified chargers list. And if so, we're going to be switching over to an EPRI list. I can get you the name for that acronym shortly, but basically it's going to be an updated list. So it will be slightly different from the list that's currently on our website of qualified chargers.
Okay, and the next question was, is that also the same as the rebate recipient acknowledgement form? The site verification form and the rebate recipient acknowledgement form are different. The rebate recipient acknowledgement form is what you will use if you're applying as a third party applicant. But they will be combined into one document, and ODOT will kind of make it clear which scenario you would need to fill out. Everyone, no matter what, will fill out the site verification form, I believe. Is that correct, Jenna?
Yeah, that's correct. We're working to combine the two forms just to create less paperwork for everyone to fill out. But the form should be fairly similar to the forms that were used during the round one process, but there may be slight modifications, so we'll only accept that updated form.
Okay, and then the next question was if an awardee in the first round has stations installed and they are already highly utilized, can they apply for funding in the second round? Yes, you can apply in two rounds. If you reserved funding in the first round, you can apply for the second round. Just keep in mind that each entity is cannot receive more than 150,000 in rebates per round.
Mhm.
Okay, and then installers. Someone asked, do installers need to have any certifications? I believe installers need to have the EVITP certification, or there needs to be at least one person on site with that certification in order to install charging equipment.
Mhm.
To confirm, maintenance needs to be purchased to qualify for the rebate. Um, Jenna, are you able to answer that one?
So let me go back to our um, eligible cost list, and let's see if maintenance is on here. I don't see oh, yes. So operation and maintenance contracts are on here. But the maintenance contract, the service level agreement is only required for publicly accessible parking sites. Hopefully that gets at your question.
Okay, and the next question was, are 4 ports required for a condominium association, or will 3 ports suffice? For multifamily housing sites, 4 ports are required to qualify. Okay,
Once the rebate,
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
No, you're good.
Once the rebate is approved, how soon can construction start? As soon as you want. Yeah, you can start construction right away if you would like after the rebate is approved. Like we mentioned earlier, you'll have 9 months from the reservation date to complete your project.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? If a business is looking to replace existing stations, they would need to meet the minimum 4 ports requirement. Yes, that is correct. If you're replacing broken stations, it would still need, or if it's a business, the minimum is 2, so you would need to fulfill the 2 port requirement, if it's at a business. The 4 port requirement is for multifamily housing only. So
Mhm.
yeah. These are some great questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to see any specific slides again, just let me know. And I also want to add, I briefly mentioned that the draft guidelines were posted, but they are available on our website right now. So I can link to them in the chat.
Okay. How would stacking the rebate work with PGE and ODOT? Would you receive a certain percent from each? So you would apply for the PGE incentive first, and then whatever you're receiving from the PGE incentive, it would be subtracted off of the final 75% of eligible costs rebate calculation. When you're filling out the application, it'll do the entire calculation for you there. Um, so yeah, the PGE incentive will be subtracted off of your eligible costs. Is that right, Jenna?
Yep, that's correct. And we calculate this when you're filling out your application during the reservation process. When you initially submit for pre installation, you list the amount that you're receiving from your utility or expect to receive from your utility. And then when you move forward with the post installation portion, it reduces that amount.
Okay, and then if we have follow-up questions, best to send to that's the ODOT email address. Yeah, you can reach out to that one, or I put the fourth email address below that in case you want to reach out to us as well.
And I also would like to note that around the same time that we host that last webinar, so February 28th, we will post a PDF of the application so people can also view it in that format too.
Okay, another question. Does the charging station retain the carbon credits? Do you have any insight on that, Jenna?
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to the clean fuels credits. So it is a requirement of the program that applicants have to apply for the clean fuels credits. And so when they do that, the charging station owner would be able to claim those credits.
Okay, and then the next question, just to be clear, the ODOT rebate, if combined with a rebate from a utility like PGE, it can never exceed 75% of eligible costs. Yeah, so it'll be the per port rebate, or 75% of eligible costs. The final rebate calculation will take into account that PGE incentive. Um, and then so it'll be reduced from that, and then do the 75% calculation. So the rebate will either be that or the per port
Mhm.
calculation.
Yeah, and in the coming weeks, we will post a rebate calculator, so you'll be able to calculate your rebate. We have one currently listed on our website that is using the old rebate amounts, but you can practice with it there as well. But we will be updating it shortly. But yes, your rebate would never exceed that 75% from the community charging rebate program.
Okay, we'll wait a couple more minutes and see if there's any more questions. Um, to clarify on the carbon credits, the business incurring the costs will need to claim the LCFS credits.
I haven't heard of LCFS credits before. I That might have been a typo. Maybe it was clean fuels credits. Um, yes, I believe the individual that owns the charging station would need to be the one to claim the credits. However, we can clarify over email as well.
And then Mike said, is it 70 or 75%? It's 75% of eligible project costs.
Mhm.
Okay. The next question, how does the network provider work? Um, it can work a few different ways. Typically, when you're buying charging stations, um, wherever you're buying them from will typically set you up with a network provider. Um, and networking allows you to do various things, such as charge people to use the stations if that's what you choose to do. And it'll also collect other data, such as time of use. And things like that that ODOT will require for reporting on an annual basis. But yeah, typically when you're buying charging stations, it'll be kind of a package deal where you can buy the charging stations and set up a network deal at the same time. And yeah, it's network agreements are an eligible cost, so up to 3 years if paid in advance.
And it looks like Jillian just answered, I believe it was Allison's question about LCFS credits.
Okay. So are the hours and days a week requirement for parking have any flexibility? And if businesses are closed but the lot is available, does this work as well?
I can
Um,
take a crack at that, Brittany. Yeah, so for round two, we require that publicly accessible parking stations where the stations are located would need to be accessible for 60 hours a week. But there's no requirement on which days they have to be eligible or which days they have to be accessible. So if your business is closed on a Saturday or a Monday, as long as you get those 60 hours where it's available to the public, then that's fine. And if the business is closed but the lot is available for charging, then that counts as well.
how do we apply for the multifamily housing exemption for dedicated parking spaces? So I believe that will be noted in the online application. Um,
Yeah, so we take that on a case by case basis. So we can correspond over email and get more information on your project site and what the deeded spaces are like and how it's set up at your multifamily housing and work out that situation with you.
Okay, can we get a list of service providers? We do have a guide for obtaining quotes that includes different charging companies as well as network service providers, and I can share that with you after this presentation. Actually, I can probably share it in the chat now as well.
And I see Paul mentioned that he could help Sonia. Paul, if we could get some of your contact information, we could also add you to that obtain a quote document if you'd like to be added.
How do we get on your list of service providers? We just by asking really. Yeah, we, wanna add people who are able to help in the installation process and be, a tool for folks looking to install charging stations. So, yeah, if you just
Mhm.
get in contact with us, we can look to add you to the list.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul.
Alright. We'll give it maybe another minute or 2 to see if anyone else has questions. What email address should service providers use to be put on the list?
I can
Um,
include ours and I can update that document,
yeah,
uh,
yeah.
ODOT email. I'll put it in the chat really quick.
Okay, and then another question. For the number of parking spaces in our lot, do we include those dedicated to homeowners or just visitor spots? All right, Jenna, do you want to
Sorry,
take that
Brittany. Yeah, sorry, I was
one?
putting that in the chat. So on number of parking spaces in our lot, do we include those dedicated to homeowners or just visitor spots? So if the parking spots are deeded, then we would need to get a bit more information from you. But if they're just visitor spots and they're accessible to everyone, then those would be eligible.
Okay, and then another question, are there any other incentives for tribal lands? So I believe not like an additional funding incentive for this program, but typically I believe most of the tribal lands will fall into the priority communities. So they will fall into that 70% category um, of funding.
And Sonia, I'd like to circle back to your question just to make sure I covered it. So the if you have visitor spots or a number of visitor spots, those are eligible. If you have spots specifically deeded to certain homeowners, then we would need to know the parameters of how they're deeded. If they're just dedicated to the residents themselves and any resident can use those spots, then those would be eligible for the multifamily housing. But if they're deeded to individual residents and only one person can use those, then we would need to get more information. Perfect. And I don't see any other questions coming in the chat. Oh, we just got one more. Oh, that was in response to Paul. So Paul, for tribal lands, check out the alternative refueling infrastructure tax credit. And I'll put our contact information back up on the screen. Again, once this presentation ends and this webinar closes out, you guys will automatically be sent to a survey. And we really appreciate your feedback if you guys have time to fill it out.
Alrighty, thank you for everyone for joining today. Yeah, be sure to sign up for the session on February 28th because that's when we'll walk through the application all together.
Perfect. And we will have this recording up as soon as possible, most likely in the next day or two, up on our Community Charging Rebates program website if anybody wants to circle back. But thank you for all of the great questions and for attending today.
Bye, everyone.